Alright guys, welcome to the long-awaited completion of the XXXL Summit project. We're going to be stretching the chassis out today, or in the next few days, or weeks, or whatever. It's been a long time coming. I've bounced around a lot of ideas that I want to do. I'm not sure. I think I'm going to end up trying one. If not, we'll figure something else out. But the plan is to take two front halves of the chassis and put them together. I have this left over from my 6x6 project. I just cut the back half of the chassis off for the third axle, I guess, the 5 and 6 wheels. So I'm left with this extra spare front part of a chassis, so that's kind of what inspired the project. So you can see on the bottom that obviously the front is a bit different than the back portion of the chassis. The main difference is the servos, or the holes, cutouts, mounts for this front servos are there, and the steering assembly and everything. And since I want to be keeping four-wheel steer and making it better, well, it's just the perfect setup. So it'll go pretty much like that. Something like that. Actually, no. Something like that. I'm going to be keeping the stock battery doors. So I'm going to cut the current chassis I have right around there so that the total width for the battery compartment, or total length for the battery compartment, I guess, will stay the same. So I'll be able to use the battery doors to kind of line up the whole setup. Normally the axle's right here, and after it'll be right about here, so we will gain some length, which is what we're also going for, and we'll have a perfect setup for rear steer. And that's mainly it. We'll also, well, with a longer vehicle, you should not tip back as much, I think. And we'll have a little bit more space for electronics. I don't know. I don't want to do it. There's all sorts of reasons why or why not. But anyways, I think the first step, I'm going to strip everything down. Try and get my current truck down to its chassis, pretty much. And then I'll see what I can do to cut it, I guess. It's going to be a big step, but it's got to be done. Well, here it is, all stripped down. Pretty much just a chassis left. Well, complete with electronics and everything, but I think it's going to be about like that. So I'm going to have to cut right down. This thing will tuck back. I'll cut from the bottom, and I'll be able to clear the motor. So now I just have to measure and cut, and once that's done, we'll start talking about ways to squish them together. Well, here it is cut down. This is the old piece. Put the battery doors back on just so I can tell. Old piece is gone. New piece in like that. You can see, well, here. Cut it a bit too long, which I did intentionally, just so I can trim it back to fit. Looks like I need to go about, however big this gap is, I need to move it over that way. On the original chassis, kind of got a little slanted, so I'll just have to carve this one to fit, I guess. Carve this one to fit. Or maybe straighten this one out a bit, or a combination. So I'm going to do some cutting and filing, and then once they're able to be lined up, we'll go from there. Okay, so I did a bunch of carving and snipping and whittling away, and here it is. It fits together, not bad. It looks good now. It's not done, but a few things I learned along the way. You're going to want to use your battery doors as a reference of keeping everything square and lining everything up. You're going to want to do more than just line up the bottom slot, because that's what I did on this side as I was cutting along, but this back half was kind of tilted this way, so I ended up cutting more than I needed. You can see here there's a millimeter or maybe 2 millimeter gap. So it is really best to put in the vent covers with the tip or the clip tab things, and then make frequent checks as you're cutting down. You can put the doors fit in the little groove here, and then you can clip it up top. So as you go along, it's easier to tell what's going on. So, oh, there she goes. So yeah, it's not actually together, but it's close enough that I think we're gonna move on to the next step. So what I'm planning on doing is, you can see down here there's this kind of solid grid pattern of plastic. What I'm thinking of doing is drilling a hole this way, so like this, into the plastic on here and here, and then the other respective sides, of course. And then once I have holes bored out, I'm going to use this stuff. It's carbon rod. I think this is 5 or 6 millimeter. It's actually surprisingly stiff. It's quite stiff. If you flex it over the course of a foot and a half, you can barely get anything. So together it's going to be quite strong, I think. And I'm just going to insert it in with epoxy so it stays in place, and the epoxy should help strengthen it. And then I should be able to push the two pieces together, and I'll put epoxy where all the plastic comes together. And then if it still needs more strength, which it probably will, I think I might just overlay this rod on the top, like tuck it in right here and epoxy it in place. Then there'll be 2 rods. And if need be, I could do another one right beside. So that should be pretty strong, but we'll see as we go. Okay, so I got the holes drilled. It worked out all right. I used slightly larger of a drill bit, so I'd have a little bit of slack to take up for my drilling inaccuracies. Obviously the rods will have to be cut down, but I put it in. You can see it runs through the whole assembly. I ended it right about here on the original assembly, or on the original chassis piece, and then it goes all the way through on the new chassis piece. So I think I'm gonna cut them down, and then I'll epoxy them together. I got some of this Gorilla epoxy, so we'll see how it works. Okay, so here it is, all epoxied up. It got a little messy, like epoxy usually does. I just coated the rods, slipped it in one side, coated the connection and the sticking out rod, put it in the other side, and then I kind of gooped some on the connections here. There's a bigger gap here where it leaked through, dripped onto the motor a little bit, so I just jammed a piece of cardboard and it should stop it, and worst case scenario I can sand it off or something. And then I also filled a few of these triangles. I think this one, that one, that one, that one, that one, this one, and these 2, and down here, kind of to just really set it into place. So we'll let it dry overnight, and we'll see what it looks like in the morning. Okay, so it's been 24-ish hours. The epoxy is all dry, and I tested it, and it's actually quite strong with just the one carbon rod in there. I'm not really set up to film very well, but I was pushing on the chassis on both sides, and the center part wasn't flexing at all, just these tabs were flexing. So I was thinking about putting more rods on top, but I might just leave it for now and see how it works out. A few things I do want to do is bridge some of the gaps, fill in the spaces here, And, well, here's the biggest problem. Right in there, there's quite a large gap due to me messing up and trimming too much down. So I'm going to try and kind of do a second round of epoxy, just fill in these cracks and stuff in here. And then I'll go from there and see if I want to add in more structural support. But overall, it's looking quite well. And, oh geez. You can see the epoxy kind of filled in its own gaps pretty well there. I'll probably take a little file to it and sand some of the stuff down, but yeah, it's actually came together quite nice. These things pop out, which is good. I didn't epoxy them in place. Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised. Just the one. Here, I'll see if I can give you a little demo. I'm pushing quite hard, and yeah, there's no flex even without the battery doors. Well, my motor mount's flexing, I guess. So yeah, that should tell you. Going like that is a little sketchy, but the battery doors will mostly be in place there. So yeah, I think for now I'm just going to go for round 2 of epoxy and then reassess tomorrow. Overall results are good though. Well, it's been another 24 hours. I think I got all the gaps filled in. Looks kind of messy, but I'm not really too worried about it. This gap filled in quite nice. I was just thinking epoxy might not be the best for the battery door part because with the doors open it can be pretty flexy and epoxy can break. So I'm just going to leave for now. I'll drive it around. If it does crack, I might use something like hot glue that has a bit more flex. But I think it's pretty good so far. Even with just the one carbon rod, it's quite stiff, especially with the battery doors in. I think next step is to maybe figure out what I'm going to do to cover the bottom. Maybe use 2 covers combined, except the holes for the screws are kind of filled in, so I won't be able to use them all, but I guess we'll see. Alright, so here's what I came up with. I pretty much just cut 2 of the pieces, and they'll go like that. I just taped them together for now. I'm going to use some epoxy again, and bed in some rod too to make it stronger. Right, so now all that's left is to assemble the pieces back. I've already transitioned the servo here. I think I'm going to move one of these shift servos up here down to back here so you can have the short linkage like this style. Less slot than the long linkage, and the long linkage won't reach anymore, so we're going to have to do the short linkage. So yeah, I'm just going to assemble everything I can, move it over. I'm waiting for the, well, there's the piece getting weighed down by a drill. Waiting for it to dry. So we'll see how it looks with everything on it, I guess. Except for the piece that's drying. Okay, so as you can see, the stock drive shaft is obviously a little short now with all this extra room we added. So I just took I got these pieces off of an old axle and drive shaft. One splined piece and one, I guess you'd call it female splined piece. So I'm just going to, this will go on here. I'm just going to put the spline piece in the middle, joining these 2 together. I'll probably use epoxy again because it's been working good so far. So then it'll pretty much be a super long drive shaft. Here, I'll make it real quick. Yeah, so it'll be like this, just a little bit of gap in the middle, and then slide on there. And it's kind of hard one-handed. There. So it'll end up looking like that, which I don't think is too bad. Alright, so here's the stretched out summit, 95% done. I still have to figure out something with the body, because the mounting holes are now in the wrong place because it's longer. So I'll figure something out with that. I might redo the whole body in general. Also, I 3D printed some covers, just for fun, not really a part of the stretch project. And this extra space back here that I gained with the longer chassis, I 3D printed a little bracket that screws in where the tranny would have screwed in. Then I 3D printed this case for this speaker for my ESS One. As you can see, one of the wires pulled out, so I haven't tested that out yet. I also 3D printed a back bumper mount because I needed one. Put the back bumper on, so that's what it looks like. The longer drive shaft is in, the customized cover is in. I intentionally cut them at 2 different places so it wouldn't be all the weak spots in one. I got the steering hooked up. Pretty much everything's ready to roll. I fired up my controller and adjusted the endpoints and reversed some things because the rear shift servo is now at the back instead of having a long rod that goes all the way front to back. What else did I do? Just adjusted some trims and changed some settings in my rear steer. I'll have a running video up shortly. One thing I forgot to mention and forgot to do is I got to cut some slots here for the wires to fit through. I just don't have it clicked in right now because the slots are normally on the rear part of the chassis, which there is no rear part of the chassis anymore. I'll fix this wire, I'll cut some slots, and then I'll figure out something with the body, and then I will post a running video. It is snowy outside, so it won't be rock crawling as much, but should still be good.